Well, welcome to another episode of Successfully Unsuccessful. I'm your host, Josh Dietrich. And today I'd like to welcome my wife, Danielle. Hello, Danielle.
Hello.
I've been married to this beautiful bride for 14 years, and we have five children together, ages 13 down to 4. And I'll say 2023 has been an interesting year, both of good celebrations of wins and some trials and tribulations. But I like to celebrate a few of those wins because we're able to sit here right now with no kids at home. That's new for us, right?
That's exciting. Yes.
All kids are in school. Well, the last one is just a couple days a week, which is exciting still. And but zero kids in
Yep.
diapers, right?
Yep.
That's a praise God for that. But we've been able to take a few trips this year and do some special things alone, and also been able to take some family trips. And our favorite thing with taking trips is really just to make memories. And so that brings us to this kind of phase we're in now, and it's a really exciting new phase as we're both sort of exploring what's next in our life. But it doesn't come without trials. And the trials we've had in this season have been very unique. We have a couple middle schoolers now. And so we're dealing with getting out of summer into new routines and
Mhm.
dealing with discipline and behavioral issues already at school. But, I think the middle schoolers we have are really seeing this new thing called, adolescence,
Yeah.
dealing with kids,
Mhm.
social media, cyberbullying, even character choices or character friends choices, and just some of the things we're doing. And so it's been a really interesting season, but we're looking forward to share with you our journey. And part of that journey includes the good and the bad and the ugly. We both spend time in counseling, which personally, for me, is always rewarding, and you as well. I'm sure we've had lots of conversations about it. But despite our current challenges and our past challenges, we do continue to still be a united front. And we've grown in our marriage and our relationship by navigating some of these greatest challenges. And a couple of these things we shouldn't have had to face, and we have. And our marriage was at risk. And now we're here today, really hoping that our story might touch you. It might touch you and be used as an encouragement, but also a challenge. In episode 1, I shared with you my successfully unsuccessful story, and I explained how the pursuit of success became an obsession, really, and the obsession that took my focus off of my faith and my family, how I deceived myself and justified behaviors that eventually led to anger, anxiety, and infidelity. But today we're going to explore the effects of Josh's unsuccess from the main point of view of my wife, Danielle, and we get to hear from her. And it's our hope that our story can be an encouragement and really to allow us to grow and to live the life to its fullest so you can become the person God made you to be. So, without further ado, we're going to get into this, and we're going to do something a little different. And you might not normally see this,
Do
but
I know about this?
I'm going to try to speak in third person. So
Okay.
that doesn't really happen at home, but for an interview, I'm going to reference Josh as myself.
Okay.
Okay. And that I think will help make it a little more objective.
Okay.
So here we go. Danielle, are you ready?
I think so. We'll see.
All right. Well, this wasn't rehearsed, so this is
No,
pretty
I
raw.
haven't. Yeah, no idea.
And you're hearing these questions for the first time.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
take us through the season of life, okay, when you met Josh and sort of what happened up into that point, and then really how you met, how you fell in love, and started your life together.
Oh, wow. Wow. We're going way back now. Yeah, Josh and I met at a barbecue on 4th of July, July 3rd, actually. And I don't know if it was like love at first sight. No, it wasn't at that moment.
I can't blame you.
Josh was really hyper, I remember. And I was almost like, gosh, he's a little arrogant even. I don't know. I don't know about this guy. But something was still intriguing about him still. So I remember he had taken his cell phone. And of course, in Josh fashion, he didn't have it charged. Battery, or his battery was about to run dead. So he it off so he could ask for my number at the end before I was leaving with my friends. So he did that and then got my number and I was like, you know what, I'll give it a shot. We'll see here. And then a couple days later called me for a date. And a couple days later, I think we went on the date. And that was magical. I mean, to say it
Ooh,
that way, it was
magical.
It was
The first date?
the first date. I remember we went out to eat and around here. We went out to eat and we were talking, even with your mom. He called his mom on the phone while we were there, which
Jeez.
I don't know if I recommend necessarily on a date,
Yeah, probably not.
but we did. And I think, did we go dancing, or I can't
The first
exactly
night? I don't think
remember.
so. I think
Maybe
I
that was the
ran out
next
of
one.
gas and had to go to the gas station.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. But then more in Josh fashion. Yeah. So we ended up running out of gas, had to go to the gas station, which is odd when you're on a first date too. But I remember after the date, Josh came and hung out for a little bit at my apartment, just talking and kind of getting to know each other better. And I remember calling my mom the next day and I said, yep, I found the guy I'm going to marry. So I knew pretty instantly after that first date that it was definitely God was intervening to have me
Your
find him.
life and
So-
lifestyle up until that point, I recall, was very similar to Josh's, if I understand
Yeah,
the story
yeah.
correctly. What was going on in your world then?
Yeah, it was kind of a mess a little bit. I mean, I was teaching at the time. I loved my students. That was like my main goal at the time, was just being the best teacher I could be, to my 4th and 5th graders that I had. But I was just kind of out just searching. Like, I was kind of always like, oh, the guy, I'll find a guy. God will give me a guy someday. It'll happen. Probably it will. But I was just doing my thing with my friends and not really caring too much about what I was actually doing besides my students and having some fun. I know it sounds bad, but I was 25 or whatever we were.
We were young.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. So how did you really know? I mean, you told your mom that you wanted to marry this guy, Josh, you just went on a date with.
Yeah.
How did you know, and what about that date or the situation that led you to feel that way?
Gosh, that's a good question. I can't explain except for that's just how it felt. Like, I kind of just knew. Like, you know how it sounds so cliche, but when people say, you know, and you know, like, I knew, like, I did. Like, this was the guy. I think we always complimented each other well. Like, you like to say, now I'm your yin to the yang, or however we say it. And I think that I probably said it wrong, but I think that's true. Like, we couldn't be more different in many ways, but on the important things, we're very similar on the things that matter, like our faith and our kids and raising them and all those things. But I don't know. I think we just always just kind of fit. I can't even describe. I just knew.
I think Josh felt the same way.
Oh,
But
yes,
walk
'cause
us
you're
through
not
the
Josh.
timetable then. So you said
Yeah.
July 3rd, you met Josh,
Yeah.
and how did the rest of it progress up to
Yeah.
marriage?
Yeah. So we were, we dated for about 10 months and then we were engaged. It was quick. But we knew that's what we wanted to go on next. We wanted to get married. And then within, gosh, not even 10 months later, we were married, moving out to where we live now, and started a family less than a year later. So it all happened really quickly, which I think back kind of makes me laugh now. I think my mom's always like, when you know, and it's the guy, and it just kind of happens. You don't have to sit around and wait. It just happens.
That's the case for you,
So
right?
yeah.
Well, given such a short window of time to really learn about each other, the
Yeah.
good, the bad, the ugly, I think
Yeah.
the question I want to just bring to the audience's attention is, what were you unaware about of Josh? Like, you weren't so thrilled about, or things that maybe you hadn't found out yet, or really had to deal with until after you were married or engaged?
Good question. I always knew Josh was very excited about life and always trying to create things and do things, and very hyperactive. But I didn't know to the extreme of how hyperactive Josh was until later on, and just how many thoughts he could give you in a day and how many things he was doing. And it's hard on a marriage at times when a person is, hyperactive in that way. Can I say ADHD or whatever we want to say? And so
Undiagnosed, maybe.
Undiagnosed till more recently. Yeah. So that is hard, navigating that. So learning kind of those quirks that, like, you're always going to have an idea and you're always going to want to talk to someone or multiple people. So we've compromised in those ways. Like, now it's like, all right, I know you got a lot of ideas today when you get home from work, but I can't hear 10 of them. Tell me your 2 top things. Or, okay, we're going to go to church, and since we live close by, you're going to drive and I'm going to drive, because I'm going to sneak out the back and get the kiddos home, but you can stay and talk if you need to. So navigating just our big differences in our personalities.
Maybe
didn't
had
realize
to kind
the
of
awareness.
learn.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Had to learn how to
Were
learn how
anything hidden? Was anything like about him or his family, or things he did, or uniquenesses or tempers, or
Josh has a little bit of an anger issue. And I think did you talk about that in your podcast,
Oh
the
yeah,
first one? Okay. Or did he talk about that?
he did.
um, yeah, I didn't realize the anger because I hadn't really seen that too much until you're really living together and you're really, in the heart of it.
Doing
But
life, yeah.
then doing life, yeah. I think another one was just our families, how different in a lot of ways our families were, in learning how to mesh those two together. I came from a pretty quieter household,
Mm.
and we didn't always share all of our feelings. And there was a lot of lenience and a lot of growth moments where Josh grew up in a different home and had his own struggles with his parents. And I'm not that he didn't have a great relationship, but I had a really close relationship with my parents, and he not so much. And just the different ways we were raised was really, really difficult. And so that, I think that was one of the big ones, how I was going to deal with just this differences of our parents.
Yeah.
Was really hard, especially Josh's mom has always been a hard one for us to deal with and to figure out. But I think
Yeah, I mean, I
we've
think
made a lot of
what
progress.
I understand is some of the largest challenges came from that season of navigating in-laws.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a
And
big one.
some of the
Probably for
first
everyone.
fights,
Yeah,
certainly,
yeah.
certainly, but sometimes people learn to make through it
Hmm.
or shut up and put up, and you know but many cases it's like it just becomes that issue that never goes away.
Right. You
And
just keep burying
so
it down there and it's not being
was that
solved.
this case? Like
I think so. I
how
think so.
did you
It
bring
was
this to his
hard because
attention?
how do you say, I'm really having a hard time with your mom, but he wants to defend his mom, but he wants to defend me too. And so it took a long time to really figure out how to do that. And I think we didn't really get to the heart of that until a couple of years ago. Quite honestly, it's always been a really kind of problem in our marriage. And that was when we both started going to counseling and marriage counseling after this whole situation happened. And just kind of that transformation of us as people, we realize, okay, she's means no harm, but the way she comes across may not be how we like it, but she's still part of our family, and we still do have to spend time with her, and we do have to
Yeah.
respect her and appreciate her. So I think we've come a long way with that. There was something I was gonna the other thing I realized people tend to forget when they're getting married, and I think we didn't realize this too, was like your childhood really does affect your marriage.
Totally.
It really does. That stuff you carry, how you were raised, the traumas that you may or may not even know about that are coming up.
Josh's mommy issues and your
Yeah, seriously, you had the issues with your mom and never brought it up, and it was kind of always reflected on me having issues, but actually he had a lot of his own. So yeah, I for sure childhood does affect a marriage.
I feel like
for sure.
conflict is a tough thing, especially for younger couples that are married,
Yeah.
especially when it impacts someone so near and dear to your heart and family.
Yeah.
And so I think, what would be your recommendation? And like, because dealing with hearing that your mom is tough
Yeah.
is a natural defense mechanism,
Definitely.
right?
Yep.
And so I feel like, as you're analyzing your relationship with your spouse, you want to encourage your spouse to be open, but you also, about his feelings about the situation, but also want to make sure that you are heard
Yeah.
and understood. So how would you kind of reconcile maybe your viewpoint from then up to now, and how that's changed, or how other men could more importantly try to honor their wives' situation as you had to with Josh?
I think one of our biggest steps in that was honestly going to the marriage counselor. I
Mm.
think it's healthy we both have our separate counselors, but to go to your marriage counselor and you're in a safe environment and they're able to pull those things out of you and give you some tricks on how you can communicate at home and not offend the other person. One of our biggest sayings, we loved our marriage counselor, was the story I'm telling myself. And then we know we're probably thinking something that the other person's not going to agree with, not think that that's the problem or whatever, but
Right.
it kind of gives a preface like, hey, this is coming, but I need to get this out. Communication, but it's hard to communicate. So if you can sit down each week and really map out like what is going on with you, with your week, and what do you need to address. And we just have like our own little, like, what's it called? The notes, or what would Josh call it? The little note thing where we put okay, we want to talk about this when we meet this week. And it's just whenever it comes to our mind, so we can just get that off. And if it's urgent, clearly we talk sooner. But
Yeah.
communication's hard. So I think that if you have someone who can help walk you through it a little bit, like your therapist
Well, counseling
is
is so
helpful.
interesting too, like our brain and our feelings and our
Hmm.
thoughts and how much those impact us.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times it's just we know each other so well, or a man and a woman, fight for the dumbest
Right.
reasons. And a lot of times there's assumptions made or feelings that have come up, or interpretations are
Yeah.
different, and you just need a translator.
Yeah.
And I think why is there such a stigma? Like in this case, was marriage counseling something that you and Josh had talked about doing?
That's so funny because I was always growing up with a stigma of like, stay away from counselors. You don't need a counselor. Everything's great. Not, I mean, that's just what I grew up kind of thinking. I was like, in my pride, I guess. I
Mm.
was like, I don't need to go to no marriage counselor or no counselor. And now it turns out it's probably one of the best things I've ever done, and I recommend it to
What's a
everybody.
famous
So,
saying
yeah.
around that I think you and Josh have used? Like, we
Oh,
don't go to marriage counseling to fix our marriage, but to take our good marriage
oh,
and
to become a great marriage.
yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. There we go. I knew that was in there
It
somewhere.
was in there.
So, how did Josh respond when dealing with your feelings and your emotions towards his mom? Was he receptive? Was he respectful? Could he understand where you were coming from?
Hmm. Hmm. I think the first part of that is no at the beginning for quite a long time. But more recently, after we've really been able to really communicate and through our separate therapies and really just figure out um, how to do those things, Josh is completely receptive. It's like completely different person almost on
Hmm.
how he listens to me and helps me and guides me through things. In fact, my own therapist will come after we're talking and she'll say, okay, just make sure you run through those things with Josh. And he's always good at, taking those things apart. I'm more emotional. He's more logical. So yes and no is that answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just encourage others too that it's sometimes scary to swallow your pride, and
Mhm.
to, as men specifically, to bring yourself to a place where you're able to say what you feel without feeling it or using tone,
Yeah.
and really asking thought-provoking questions to get to the heart of the matter, right? Because I think what I've understood from the marriage is that there's layers that aren't the surface issues aren't necessarily the
They're not
problem. It's
no,
something
it's
that's
underneath.
another layer down, right? And so if the attitude is, I don't want to talk about it, you can't make progress. But
Yeah.
at least
Which was
showing
my
up.
attitude.
And
I'm going to
that's
hide
hard,
this.
right?
I'm
Because that's a
scared. I
wall,
don't.
just a
Right.
starting point. And so I
Hmm.
think there's two sides of every story. And I think it's important for people to really break that down and find time to communicate with each other. So that's good. So let's fast forward
Okay.
here a little bit. We got married. Josh and Danielle got married in 4409,
Hmm.
and so roughly not even a year later, Josh took a new job.
Okay. This is where it
In
gets. This is where it
2010, Josh
gets
left
rough.
Best Buy and joined a company, water filter company, and it was roughly 100 miles away, driving a couple days a week, or he would go down, spend the night, and then come back up and do the same thing. And in that season was certainly good in the transition, and the marriage, it seemed like, was aligned with the taking that step. The person that ran the business was respectful
Hmm.
and respectable,
Hmm.
and there was a rapport there.
Yeah.
And but on the flip side, there were other challenges, right?
Mhm.
There's a new marriage, clearly, and a new child on the way, and pregnant.
I'm commuting to the
You were
city still.
working,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
so let's talk about, walk through the distinct seasons that stand out to you in 2010 until 2017.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
So this is a big one, but here
Yeah.
I'll just kind of concentrate the focus
Yeah.
on
That's good.
what are the struggles you faced or the emotions you felt, right? As this was all kind of unwinding in terms of Josh being gone.
Hmm.
What it was the lack of a husband and support as a husband. Like, what did, paint a picture of what that was like how that was going on, and the areas he just wasn't there. And then maybe your perspective truly on like business travel, right? So there's a
Yeah.
lot here, but if you think back in that
Yeah.
period from 2010 to 2017, was a long season of hard work. So take us there. What comes through your mind in that season?
The first thing that came to my mind was just a lot of bitterness, a lot of resentment, a lot of anger towards Josh. Josh just wasn't around. And when he was around, I mean, he was commuting. And then when he wasn't commuting, he was usually, I don't know, he was usually traveling once or twice a month for multiple days. And I was home with these two pretty tough children, still to this day are still our tough ones. And just trying to navigate that and all their needs. And I had recently had resigned from my job, and I was staying home with them. And that was a whole new season for me that I was trying to navigate and understand. I was going from this career to being home with my children, but it's what I wanted, but it was hard and it were long days. So I was dealing with that, and I just never felt like I had the support of my husband. I just wanted him to come back. And I just remember so many years just praying, like, bring this guy back to me. Just bring this guy back to me. Never did I imagine he'd bring you back to me in the way that it happened. But thank God he did. But it was a lot of pain. I just was sad a lot. I remember my dad had retired at the time, and anyone who knows me knows I adore my parents, and I was spending a lot of time with my dad, and the two oldest boys got to have a lot of grandpa time, and we did trips and all kinds of fun things. So he kept my mind off things, and he was great. He was around. It sounds funny. Our first dog, he was like my support. He was like my mental health support dog. And when he passed away, did I struggle. And I remember telling you it's because he was the one I felt always here for me, even though he was a dog. Yeah. But he was a good boy. So yeah, I miss him. But
what specifically do you recall, right? Because there's a lot of things there. Business travel. Yeah. You had the lack of support. You had 2 young kids. Obviously, you're traveling for work for a little bit, but then, a good season, 2012 through 2017, you had been home, right?
Yep.
So
had another kid in there.
So maybe that's where there was a distinction when that third kid came. It was almost like an excuse for Josh to amp up his game, and put his wife in a position of, you got this. Walk us through that season where, because I think men can do this. I have a go have fun, free card. He's working as long as you're home within this period of time. What do you recall?
Okay. Yeah. Good question. I remember Josh always saying to me, like, come on, this is what you wanted. You're a stay-at-home mom. That's all you got to do is just take care of the kids. It can't be that hard. That's what I remember. That I'm like, yeah, probably wouldn't be so hard if I had help. Because I remember, it was like 5:30 in the morning going to work and coming home anywhere between 7:30 and 8:30, 9:30, 10:30 if he was not traveling. That can build up bitterness and resentment real fast. So I remember that. And then,
so that was years of it
that I don't know if I didn't express, or I felt nervous to express because I was afraid with you having some anger stuff, or I just hadn't learned how to release some of those emotions. Maybe not even knowing what was happening until later. I knew though that he was using it as an excuse, and I would start fights purposely with him just to get some attention. I was thinking, if I'm going to get his attention, he's going to have to hang out with me and stay here, even if it's fighting. I got some attention from him. So I remember picking a lot of fights, which probably made you more and more angry. I think I was struggling with my mental health at that time, knowing there was undiagnosed anxiety there, and just trying to take care of these 2 children and get them to their appointments and all the things they were doing. So I think I was struggling in that way, and that was coming across crabby and mean to you. And I wasn't understanding your perspective and what you were doing because you were working. But I started to realize he was using it as an excuse. And I knew he was drinking a lot, and I knew he was partying, and I knew he was doing things like going to strip clubs and different things that I didn't think we would be doing, but I knew those things were happening. So I guess I just got to a point where I was like, this is my life. This is my life. This is what it is. Why would he change? He's not going to change. This is what he's doing. And I never really thought about the D word, as we say, because we won't say the word. But there were points there I was like, I'm doing this by myself anyway. How could it be this hard? And I remember even at one point on my lowest of just feeling so alone. Googling, trying to find a lawyer that could help me get divorced because I just felt like I couldn't do it any longer. And I felt like I didn't have anyone to talk to because who am I going to tell that my marriage is falling apart, right?
Churchgoer, like,
Looks
what's
like
that
you
going to
have
look
everything
like?
together. We're running small groups. We're at church every weekend.
Were you in counseling
when we were
then?
there. I wasn't in counseling yet.
Did you have friends you could talk to?
I guess I could have talked to my friends, but who wants to admit that to their friends? But looking back, I should have probably leaned on support. I don't tell my parents. They love Josh. They adored Josh. I don't want them to think one bad thing about him, right? I think my dad was aware of what was going on. How could he not be? But they love him to this day. Like Father of the Year, I like to call him now. But yeah.
So that's tough, right? So you're processing the inability to take out the emotion that you're feeling and say it in a way that doesn't have a tone, or say it in a way that really
tone. So that's something I'm working on. So I think if you stop and step back, like we tell our children, think of the other person's perspective. There's other people's perspective here. And then let's find the middle ground with that. Like you have to be aware of what the other person's going through. And I think most people don't really stop and think about that. It's very self-centered.
And that would cause defensiveness in Josh, exactly. I can imagine, because what we call the Johari's window, right? There's things that you and I or Josh and Danielle know about each other. And there are areas that I don't know about you. Those are blind spots. I'm sorry, those are hidden. And those are same thing for you, right? There's things about me you might not know, but there are things about ourselves that we don't know that the other person might know, right? And so that's the blind spot, right? So there's a car driving down the road and you know it's there, but the driver doesn't, right? And so when you process a person, especially a strong personality, strong-willed, the mission was provide for your family, work hard, make money, provide for your family, right? That was the excuse. And then it would become maybe a situation where, do you see it being like, oh, he's been awarded and afforded things he's never done in his life? Like milk it for all it's worth.
I like how you brought that up because yes, I was like, wait a second, I'm home with these kids. I'm taking care of them. And he's getting all this recognition. He's getting all these things. And like, I'm just here. Now I'm here with 5 kids and I'm just here. I guess we're not 5 kids yet, but I'm here with these kids. And like, I was a teacher. I have my master's degree. Like I loved my work. Like I was going places.
Totally.
But here I am. And it kind of was a loss of identity for myself too. Like, who am I? Am I just like Josh's wife and like a mom too? Like, is that all I have left? So there was a lot of
How much do you think that actually contributed to worse negative self-image? In pushing previous just things you had learned and processed through your adolescence into teen into adulthood, that marriage didn't really give you the voice and kind of stifled who you were. Do you recall specifically when you're like, I don't want to do this anymore? Like what happened or where you were?
I do.
What year?
I remember I was downstairs in downstairs patio area. I was right inside the door. And I remember Josh calling and he promised me he was going to be home this time. He was going to be home. He was going to be home at a good time and we could have dinner together with the kids and it would be a nice night. And he called and said, oh yeah. And he was supposed to be home probably like 4-ish. I think that day it was going to be early. And he called after that. I don't know, 4:30, 4:45. And I remember him saying, I can't come home. I got to do this business meeting. It's really important for business. I won't be able to make it. And I just remember, I was like, I'm just done. And I remember crying. And if I recall correctly, I was recently pregnant or just about to find out I was pregnant again with our 3rd kid. I can't exactly remember.
So that was compounding to it. It's like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to have to do it alone, but I'm ready.
Yeah. I suppose. Yeah. I was
you feel like you found strength at that point to say, you know what, I don't need him?
Yeah, for sure. Because I was at that point where I was like, okay, I'm already doing this. I got this. I'm done. I can do this on my own. Which I never really thought before because, you get married and it's a covenant. I mean, it's not just the contract you can get out of it. It's a covenant if you believe in the Lord and what he tells you. So that was a big deal, but I was prepared to do it. And I don't know how or why it got changed in that moment, but I guess the Lord was still holding on to my heart saying, he's still in there, Danielle.
It's tough
I don't
thinking
know.
back
I
about a
don't know.
mom doing this alone and this massive misunderstanding. And really, misunderstanding becomes justification, and justification can build up to become resentment, and resentment can push down and turn into anger, right? And so these are manifesting itself along the way. But what were your needs? Like what could Josh simply have done that would have done a wonder working difference in not having to go through the hard lessons?
I can tell you that now, because now I have the most supportive husband that you could ask for. I could ask for.
Who are you talking about?
I'm talking about this guy named Josh. He's just involved in everything. I mean, I don't even hardly recognize him in some ways. Just being there, like, let's talk with our kids, and let's do the prayers together, and let's be at dinner together, and let's go to their different events, and let me go away for an hour or two and not get mad saying you can't handle the kids, which was a big one. When he would be home, I'm like, I need 2 hours away. I just need a break.
This guy Josh could barely even handle 2 hours.
Yeah. So now he's just like here. He's like, he's in everything. And it's so fun doing it together. Yeah. Like, okay, let's talk about this. How are we going to do it? This is what it's like. Okay, we can do this. So, I can answer that because it's just so different than it was. Like, just being present. Being present.
I feel like this is a common trap to start to excuse little things, and I think it comes back to prioritization and really understanding that there's a trump card. There's a plan that includes working the plan, and that's what we do in business. But we forget that plan for our life is greater than our plan for our business, and that order is not work and then yourself and then your wife and then your kids, or whatever you decide. It's keeping God first, because his commandments are what tell us this, that love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, right? And love your neighbor as yourself. Okay. Boom. Then he tells us to love our wives like Christ loved the church. Yeah. And then he tells children to obey their parents. But there's a reason there's two. Right. And I think, man, it's simply recognizing first where you're not meeting the mark. And for me, I couldn't take it. This guy named Josh was so defensive, and it even affected in business, right? Yeah. Where
towards the end there,
anger was compounding. So, all right, let's, what did you do in those seasons to cope though? Like, I think, what was your plan? Like, how, it was like, this is going to end someday.
Oh gosh, I was busy, and I just, I don't know how did I cope? I ran a lot. I ran a lot. There's a lot of running happening for some self-care at that time. How did I cope? I just kept pushing through. I think moms can testify to this. You push through for your kids, and you just keep doing it. And you just keep doing it. And I never, though, lost sight of the Josh that was still there, even though he wasn't there. And I literally, I am not making this up, prayed every day, like, bring Josh back to me every day. I was like, he's there. Just, I want to see him again. So prayer, I guess, was a huge one. Being a prayer warrior, it works. It works. And just talking to God about those things. And I guess maybe that's what gave me the hope to hold on. Even though
did you find other ways to cope that maybe weren't as positive?
Other ways to cope that weren't as positive.
Well, for instance, like substances.
There we go. I was going to try not bring up that. I did by some point turn to alcohol for sure to help me just numb those feelings and that pain. It doesn't work because it's still there, but I thought it would work because it does for a little bit. So yeah, definitely we're not getting your needs met. You turn to things probably you shouldn't. And so I think drinking was I wouldn't say when you were gone though. I was so focused on the children. I would say that wasn't until like 2020-ish where I was pretty overwhelmed with other things. But I wouldn't say it happened too much in that time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I didn't
because I was pretty much not drinking because I was busy with the kids so much. So
true.
And I was the one there. I'm like, what's going to happen? What would happen if Josh wasn't, if Josh isn't here, what happens if they get hurt? So I don't think I was drinking much during that time, but that drinking part does come up later in the story. Yes.
Shift gears then. On the flip side, all right, it's really hard. It's really easy and it's hard. It's easy to point out other people's problems, right? And it's very hard to see your own problems and remove the problems before you can start picking on other people's stuff, right? So when someone is not right, or something in your marriage, or, there's tension and challenges, how does one begin to sort through their own contributions and challenges to the marriage? Like, everyone has to take some ownership, right? Because it does take two. So how did that manifest itself in your mind, looking back? Hindsight's 2020. And because I feel like husbands often say, that lady's crazy. My wife's a lunatic. That, and I even had those things, like, she's nuts. and the thing is, can't she understand that I'm just trying to provide for my family, right? Yeah. So would you unpack that a little bit? And I don't know how to say it other than, first, being willing to admit what those are, but then being able to share those with your husband can bring a whole new humbling experience, to the matter. Like, by being vulnerable, by sharing, hey, this is how I'm dealing with this. This is what I'm dealing with now. And it's a problem. How have you had to navigate your own challenges?
Oh, I think that we're fans of Mark and Jill Savage and their work and their stories. Amazing. And just the slow fades in a marriage, and it really is there. The slow fades happen. And
so it's a slow fade. Explain that.
I think it's a slow fade where, listen, we both have problems because we're born sinners, right? So we both have issues and they look different. But it's like you said, it's very good to look at your problem of anger and say, it's all you. You're crazy with your problem. It's yours. Just, I can't, your anger is the problem. It's easy to look at me and say, that tone of voice or that look you're giving me, right? But when we step back and really start dissecting the marriage, and you say, okay, wait a second. We both have these problems because we're not perfect. And then you start looking, okay, it's a slow fade where, for me, I never wanted the devil to win, right? Like, I remember you saying when you confessed to the bomb, is that how you said it in your podcast? I don't even know.
D-Day, the bomb.
Okay. The infidelity. I remember just the pain of that at the time. Were we getting to that yet? Am I supposed to talk about that yet? Go for it. Okay. But I remember thinking, I don't want the devil to win. I don't want the devil to win. Like, he's not going to have my marriage. He's not having my marriage. So I think when that made me really determined, no, he's not doing this. So recognizing those slow fades. And I think it is important to really tend to the other person's heart, really to their emotions, because they do mean something and they feel that strongly for whatever reason.
How do you really do that in a week, in a month, in a year that's busy, right? The days are long and the year is short.
Yeah.
And so 5 kids, raising 5 kids, getting them to school, working out, getting groceries, doing life stuff, cleaning the house. What are a couple things that have been game changing to kind of for communication and dealing with issues, but also relieving tension in a marriage, period?
Yeah, prioritize for sure. Your marriage has to be first. There's God. Well, I shouldn't say first. First there's God, then it's your marriage, and then it's your children. So prioritizing you and him, or the husband and wife.
How do you do that? How do you make intentional?
Taking those times together. I'm not a big fan of physical touch, but Josh is. So just giving him that little shoulder rub if I go by, that probably is nice. Or giving the kiss.
Careful.
Or giving the kiss when he leaves, and showing those acts of affection. Or I guess it's really stopping, even when you're in the heat of that moment, and listening. And that's hard. But once you start doing it, it becomes more natural. And once you can start realizing the other perspective of the person, it becomes more natural. So it's not something that happens overnight. There's a lot of things that go into it. But I think prioritizing, really making God first, because God is going to take care of your marriage. And then you take care of each other with the second part of that. I think I always just try to think, 2 is better than 1, because they lift each other up. So you have to remember, he's on my team. We say that a lot. Yeah. I'm on your team. I'm on your team. It's you and me. I'm on your team when we have our moments.
But how does that become reality in the midst of a week? How do you become intentional then about that?
That's a good one. Yeah. So I guess our weekly meetings, which we fail on sometimes.
Mm.
But it is important, like, okay, we got to meet every week because we got to touch base. Where are we at?
What does that
Where
look
are we
like?
at?
What is the intention of that meeting?
So our meetings are, we're writing through the week what we need to talk about. Okay, Elijah's got this thing coming up. What do you think about that? Or hey, next week our friends asked to go out for dinner. Should we do that? Do we have enough capacity is a big one. Do we have enough capacity to do that? Because we're only going to do the most important things now in our life. Because I think we spread ourselves thin, you and I both, trying to please everyone. Yes. So now it's like, no, we have boundaries. That's a good one. Put boundaries in place.
Mhm.
Perspective, put boundaries in place. So I think that's what our meeting looks like. It could be sometimes we even plan our week for our dinner for the week. Not always, but sometimes we do that.
Yep.
Just anything we know we need
Sports
to
that are
talk about.
happening, like get on the same schedule, something that's
Yes.
an exception.
And we share
for the
everything
week.
through Google, so we always know what's going on with the other person and our kids, and that's easy to look up. Like, okay, they're supposed,
What else do we share?
What else do we share?
Tools or technology or systems that allow for these types of things to be out there and available before hitting someone over the head with this problem. So like, for example, I'm thinking about, hey, we want to discuss an issue with our child or an issue with us.
Yeah.
What's a safe way you recommend doing that?
So for us, if it's something that's more in the heat of the moment that needs to be discussed soon, it can't be put off for the week. And we know it could be a sore spot for us where we could get heated, or it's not a time to do it in front of our children. We're always careful about that because those ears are always listening, and we're really, really working on that. And you are setting that tone for them, what a marriage looks like. So we will say, you know what, I'm going to put this on our calendar for later tonight, and then we're going to regroup and talk about it when there's no people around and we both had time to think. That works for us too. That's always a good one to kind of touch back at the end of the night. And I think we've been good about that. Really, really. If that's
it's weird how
reconciling.
That's a simple thing, right? So like, I get excited about, especially business people that are familiar with EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System.
Yeah, I've heard about
and it's a framework for running a business, right? Core values, vision, mission, measuring how you're doing, ensuring you're working on the right stuff, and making sure you have a weekly pulse and a check-in. And so I feel like we miss this in our lives. Like we just do
People
whatever.
are too busy.
We just let the life happen to us. But in our work, we're so focused. So I feel like that sounds like a system like that you guys are working towards and able to kind of make part of your life to ensure that all the things are working the way that it should be. So I think that's a word of encouragement for others to kind of take that step and get something on your calendar. Sunday nights at 7:00, right before kids have to get going for bed or right after they go to bed, whatever it looks
for you. Yeah.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to jump fast forward now, March 31st, 2017. This is the last day that Josh spent at Water Filters. Okay. In that week, in that month, and at this point, his side business, his product, Essential Values that he started in the garage, had taken off, and he'd already given his notice.
Yep.
He was going to leave Water Filters. So what I understand is around that month, he was employed still, but also about ready to be done and started on his own thing. That month he went to Las Vegas, and he brought his brother who hadn't been to Las Vegas and a younger kid, and wanted to show him, a good time. I'm assuming when you're in Vegas, you want to do as the Vegas people do, whatever that means. But
they say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Oh, they do?
But it doesn't stay in
It's
Vegas.
not supposed to?
It's not supposed to. Yes, it could, but it shouldn't.
So this is where Josh had done things he shouldn't. And what do you recall about Josh's behavior and attitude, kind of in that season, right? So he's starting a new business. He left Filters. I believe he started counseling very soon after. He was working remotely or working home, but then also going to his office that seemed like the hours were not a normal workday hours. They were shorter hours. So, do you recall, because this would have been a season right after one of his instances happened of infidelity, but he was going on as if nothing happened, but what led him to counseling in 3 months later in June? What had been happening?
Okay. So I think thinking back to the timeline here. Just give me 1 second. I'm figuring it out. I remember he was still kind of angry. It was hard to have him home. Gosh, yeah, you were kind of angry and still mean to me at the time. I remember I was just trying my hardest to keep up, having 3 kids. And like I said, 2 difficult ones. All kids are hard, but they are something different. I'm special, those 2. So I remember I was doing laundry and he freaked out on me about laundry. Like, how can you not get this done? And I was just like, what are you talking about? And I just remember like trying not to cry because I'm not really a crier. I remember trying not to cry. I'm like, I can't because I'm chasing kids around all day, and he just didn't understand that. And so he still had these things he was pretty angry about, pretty upset with me about things. And then I think where you're going with this is if you're talking about when you started going to counseling when you thought you were going to hit one of our kids. Is that what you're talking about? Okay. So
you're angry.
So you're angry. You're still busy, but in a different way. I was kind of like, what are you doing? I was kind of
playing
like,
pickleball.
I'm like, you're playing pickleball. You're here. You're there.
Do you feel
but
like
you're still not really helping me? But you're home. But
was any
you're
of
not
that
really
time
present.
redirected to
Being
the family?
present is important. There was more time with the family for sure. It was getting there. The reason I also do know it was getting there is because Josh has worked really hard the last couple of years rebuilding that relationship with Elijah and Asher that he missed when they were growing up because he was gone so much. And then I see the beautiful relationship he has with our last 3 because he was here and he was present. And so yes, you were home more, and I can definitely, that's a good testament to just the type of relationships you 3, younger 3 have with you.
About it. And, for men too, like to analyze the differences in relationships you have with your children is fruit, right? And unfortunately, though, that's not your wife; those are your children, right? Yeah. And so, if
we're still working, we're still working in progress. We're still upset. We still have some issues we haven't figured out. We don't have all the tools yet in our toolbox. There's a lot of things still going on.
The tools in the tool belt. Okay, so at this point, when do you realize that there's change happening? Okay, so
then Josh started counseling. After that, and I could see the progress. It was changing. He was starting to be, I think women know this, like your husband's there, but he's not really there. But they're like, oh yeah, I'm here, but I'm here for you. But they're not really present. So there's a difference between being there and being present.
Like what?
What? I'm here. I'm looking at my phone, but I'm here. What's your problem? I'm here. I remember that a lot. But Josh was more present and more intentional about trying to do a little bit more and trying to hang out with the kids a little more and trying to be a little more thoughtful towards me and a little kinder towards me. So those were very slow moments from that 2017, 18, whatever that was right there. Like,
and then our child was born in
2019.
That, what I understand, sort of plays into some of your own life experiences and challenges. But at the same time, Josh had made change and was processing things. And do you feel like you were seeing a paradigm shift?
Yes, I was seeing Josh. I was seeing not the old Josh I prayed for, but a new Josh that's better than the old Josh starting to come out. I saw the changes. I could see the things that were happening and just how he was acting and how he was treating people.
What causes that change? Like, okay, counseling.
So counseling, but ultimately counseling, like God is working in that heart of yours and he was slowly transforming you to the man he wants you to be. So I think it was slowly happening even then before we realized what was happening.
So what's an example of something that I would used to do or Josh would do and no longer did? What specific things I think more like prove transformation?
Well, this is maybe not a dumb one, but one just came to my mind for some reason. Like I had to, sounds so silly, but I had to take out the garbage and recycling every single Thursday. Pregnant and all, down the little hill.
Kids chasing you?
Kids chasing me, ice, just dramatic. Going down to put a garbage bin out because Josh, like, I'm too busy. I got to go to work. But now he just does it without a second thought. So it's like those little things that like don't mean a lot, but they sure do mean a lot, right? So like those little things started
being intentional and being thoughtful.
Really like, being intentional, be more thoughtful. Well, we talk about tending to those feelings of the other person's heart, looking at the perspective, like those things started slowly happening. So I saw growth in him, but I was like still in this like flat zone, like, okay, but I'm still just here.
Was it resentment still maybe you had?
There was definitely resentment and anger.
So Josh is this new guy in some ways maybe that bothered you worse.
It did. Like he's still now, okay, Like, he did all this. He's home now, but now he's an even better guy. And like, I'm just still here being Danielle with my kids. Sounds so pathetic because I loved being home.
Was that one of your deeper areas, darker areas?
Yes.
Like, so you were analyzing what? Your self-worth?
My self-worth.
Dealing with
children. I think my self-esteem was slowly going downhill. I think really who am I? Like I said, who am I as a person? Like, besides like Josh has got his thing. Like, I used to be I don't say this, I used to be a person. That's how I felt. Like, I used to do these things and I'm just here now. Taking care of my kids, which is a blessing. I'm never going to say not being a stay-at-home mom wasn't a blessing because it was beautiful. I would do it 100 times over and over, but it's hard. It's hard and it's lonely and it's long. So I think it was just kind of monotonous. Like, I'm just here. Here I go again. But Josh is excelling still. He's still doing the things he wants to do. So like, I kept thinking in my mind, when's my turn? Like, when's my turn? I think that's when you were improving. And then we had our daughter in 2018 and it was a hard pregnancy. And I think probably some postpartum stuff started coming out after that a little bit.
Even after the fourth?
I think so. Okay. I think when you look back, I think it was slowly starting there. And she was colicky too. And it was just really rough. I remember in 2018 with that. That's, I think, when the drinking started that you're talking about. But I remember like thinking, okay, she's 6 months old now or whatever it was. Like, she's going to be older soon. I am getting ready to go and do my thing now. Like, she'll be older, a couple years, she'll be in preschool, whatever. I'm like starting to think that in my mind, like, my life's going to come back. I'm going to have these choices here. And Josh knows this story plain as day. We were not trying to have another child. In fact, he was going in for a vasectomy very soon. And yeah, I remember.
Already scheduled, maybe?
I think it was already scheduled. Yeah. But this was a few months before. God said, no, this is exactly where I want you. I want you to take care of your kids and I'm going to give you another baby. And I fought that because I was like, there ain't no way I'm having another baby. I'm barely hanging on right now. Sure enough, we had another baby, even though we tried. And
what's the significance of this fifth?
Even though we did things to not have another baby, it still happened. But he saved my life. I like to say to Josh, because I don't know what I would have done without him. Because I think that came about with all the things that changed in my life. So Josh is struggling, all these years, and people are looking at him. He's the bad guy because he's the guy. I'm just as guilty in the situation doing things too. And I think that's when it became really apparent. I suffered postpartum depression with him. And through that, we didn't realize I had him in May. We didn't realize till like July, beginning of July, you're like, there's something really wrong, Danielle. Like, I love to go for walks. I love nature. Being outside is like one of my favorite things. And Josh could not even get me to go outside.
So I was able to recognize
Josh definitely recognized it. Yeah.
And how receptive were you to that at that point?
Yeah.
To getting help?
I was completely receptive.
Okay.
Because I knew something was wrong. I didn't feel like this after my other kids. Maybe there's a little bit of that going on with our fourth, because I got pregnant so fast. They're 15 months apart. There wasn't much time to think about it. I was just back and pregnant again. But I knew there was something wrong because I wasn't myself. And I knew because I couldn't even hardly get out of bed. I was just miserable. And I'm trying to raise, 5 kids. And Josh. But Josh is more involved now. So he was there. So he recognized
around, that. 2019 then, shortly after the last kid's born. In that same year now, but more than a few months later, holidays were coming and time to figure out family and the dynamics that come with that. And I knew at this point, I had been in a Christian business men's group who I had been, working through refining who I was, burying some of the sin that had haunted me for so long, and the counseling had been happening. But it all came to head in December after the holidays were done for me to share with you what I had done in 2 different instances of infidelity. And tell us about that night. Tell us about what you recall and how that sent you into really a pursuit of healing without even knowing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's odd how, not odd, it's God, but just how the way he has things happen. So I remember You coming down. I'm like, okay, all the kids are in bed. Like we were in a better place, getting there in a better place. I'm thinking, okay, cool. Like, well, it's like 9:00. We'll watch a movie, hang out. And you just came down all tense. And I'm like, what's going on?
I mean, I have RBF most of the time.
You do a little bit, but he's working on that. So, so you came down and it was intense. I'm like, okay, everything okay? Like, and then he came out with it and told me what happened. And I was kind of like shocked. I was shocked. I was looking at it like, what? Huh? Like, what? Like, I just remember, like, I couldn't even comprehend.
Those first few instances, I'm like, oh, this is going to be easier than
Did I even talk? I was like, yeah. I'm like, huh? What? I think I was shocked, but then when I think back to those moments, I really wasn't shocked as much as I should have been, because Josh wasn't living this life that he should have been. He was living in this way that led him to, keep sinning in these different aspects. So it was not as surprising as it could have been. But I remember you told me that, and it was it a Sunday night, I think. And I remember I went upstairs. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go upstairs and just take a break for a second. Went upstairs, shut the door. I was pretty calm, shockingly for me. I was pretty calm. Yeah, I do remember that, because I'm not always the calm about all that.
I was like I said, this is easier than I think it's gonna be.
Yeah. So I went up to our room. I Googled a counseling place in town and called them. Maybe I even left a message. I think I left a message that night. I remember being in our closet. I don't know why, probably because the kids were sleeping and I didn't want to wake them up. And I called and I left a message, and then I talked to them the next day, and I started counseling a few days later. And I'm still with my same counselor, and she has helped me with just so many things that needed to come out. So with his sin of infidelity and his anger, my sins are more within myself, of just dealing with, no, it wasn't just depression. I do have depression, but I also have anxiety, and I also have, some other things, sensory things and things that do bother me. And she kept pulling those things out. And then the more and more I saw her, the greater things got, and things just kept getting better and kept getting better. I was getting the self-care ideas to help me, and I was getting those tools to help, stop the guilty things I was, harboring over. The negative self-talk and the different things that were consuming my mind, and those different things. So as hard as it sounds that your husband is unfaithful, and you have postpartum depression, it really brought out everything I needed in a lot of ways to become the person I am now. But
were you going to go to counseling otherwise?
I was never going to go to counseling. No. And we went to marriage counseling at the same time I was seeing my new counselor. And he helped us a lot through those different things. He really did. And it was good for us to have him give us some of those tools and talk through things. But it's not easy. It's not an easy road. It's painful and it's hard. And I forgave him pretty much instantly, but that doesn't mean I trusted him right away. That was a work in progress. There's still some triggers every once in a while that will happen with different situations. We like to say we conquered Vegas. We've been there a lot of times now together, and that's not a scary thing for me anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe we got to do the Chicago one sometime.
Yeah, right.
I know on his first business trip away, he really tries not to go on business trips anymore. So he's home with us. But one a suggestion of my counselor was like, okay, when he's ready for bed, let's have him just do a sweep of the room so you can just know for your own self, because it's a trigger that there's no one in the room with him. So I remember we did that one of the times. I don't think we've
when
had
I
to
did
the
travel.
last. When you did travel, yeah. So it brought about a lot of healing, going to the counselor and getting that help, and realizing, no, I'm suffering with my own problems too, because again, I just think so much as your childhood really does affect your marriage, and it really does affect you. And I think there's lots of traumas in you that you don't even realize are traumas until you really have to face them. So breaking that down with the counselor really brought all those things out. And I'm on medication for my different things now. And I'm proud to say that, like, mental health is very, very, very dear to my heart now. And medication helps.
A whole new perspective. It's become a passion of yours.
It's such a passion, just seeing what it is and how it impacts. And yeah, having those different things that can help me with the self-care and the tools. And I just think everyone should go to counseling, but it wouldn't have came about.
So picture this, we're on this podcast right now talking about something. And many years ago, I did something I shouldn't have in 2017. And roughly 3 years after that, I stomached the courage after battling intense anger, massive anxiety, and also going through a process of getting medication
Mm-hmm.
and leveraging modern medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also very, very transformational
Mm-hmm.
and in its own way. But there's so many stigmas about
Yeah.
that, and men getting help, and women admitting the same thing, that I'm good, I'm strong-willed, I can
Mm-hmm.
muscle through this, and
Mm-hmm.
not even relying on God for
Yeah.
this, and try to carry it on your own. But I feel like that also, the craziest part about this is how traumatic those things are to have to deal with in a marriage, and infidelity and cheating, and what could end your marriage, and what, the D word had been used many times. And I thought there was a reality that I couldn't do this anymore either, that there was
Mm-hmm.
seasons that we were in. And so to take something like this to be the catalyst for change,
Mm-hmm.
and to see now that continued change into this season now where
Yeah.
we're doing things that maybe we had never considered, and we've grown in ways we never imagined, and we've been blessed in ways that we've never imagined. And it all started with this sort of step of faith, and just one step, it even led us to this idea that as humans we all stumble, but if we do just take just one step towards Christ, he's got your back. There's so much that we can go through, and we can't do it alone. And so we need community, and we need Christ, and we need our spouse. And so doing things that we could never imagine now, in fact, being here, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
something that I remember sharing with you when this happened, that, all right, I'm going to tell my story now,
And
like
I
a
wasn't
week
ready for
after I
that.
had shared with
Yeah.
you, and you're like,
Yeah. Like
easy, buddy.
you've had 3 years. Now it's my time to digest this and get used to this
Yeah.
whole situation.
So I had an unfair advantage in
Yeah.
the healing process there, but a lot of
Other
challenge
things
came
came
from
from that.
that,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Holding and harboring that.
Yeah.
But, this led us to continued new developments of learning about ourselves and our
Mm-hmm.
marriage, and in our God that we serve, and in ways that now has got us focused on what's right in front of us that's most important, in our kids, and helping them
Mm-hmm.
be there where they're at. But more importantly, our story, is not that uncommon.
No.
It's really about the decision to stop doing what you were doing and start doing things differently. And
Yeah.
we can't be the versions of ourselves if we're tired and drinking and traveling and working too much and being preoccupied with the next project. And like, that's how I lived.
Yeah.
Right. So what would you say to anyone, any man that's just in this spot of,
Oh gosh, just put me on the spot here.
well, but think
No.
about it. Where
Yeah.
where did the fruit come from in it? And everyone thinks it's going to be the worst, and it's going to be the end, and I can't share it. And the sin that harbors inside, it eats at you.
Yeah.
But I want to hear
Oh.
what good came from it. We've talked about it, but specifically, there is hope.
Yeah.
And where do you put your hope, and how does that happen?
So I yeah, I think where we are now, I'm so proud of where we are now. But people also expect this quick thing, and it's not. Anything worth, whatever is it, having, doing is work, or
Mhm.
however they say it. I don't know. But we had to work. We had to work, and we had to keep putting in the work. And like Josh said, or Josh's pseudo, whatever you are, like you have to put that hope in God. Jesus has your back. He is your best friend, and he only wants what's best for you. And I think we really had to center that and be like, no, God is here, and he's in this marriage, and he's going to bless this marriage, and we're going to protect and honor this marriage for the rest of our lives. It's almost like a new beginning for us. Like, wait, 2009 we got married, but I don't think we understood what was going to come of getting married.
Mm-mm.
You don't realize that till you're in it more, right? So I think you have to put God center, and you have to do all those things to protect your marriage. And that's not easy, and they're hard work. But if you want to keep your marriage, and you want it to be strong, healthy marriage, you have to do it. You have to go on dates with your wife. you have to take some time away. You have to meet with them every day. You have to tell them that you love them, that you care for them. You have to show them through your actions. Like, it does have to be there. And it's a two-way street.
You have to be intentional.
Woman has to do it too. Have to be intentional. Just remembering, I think we all think of love as patient, love as kind, but one of them that's really important to me is love holds no records of wrong. So who am I to hold that you did something wrong when I do stuff wrong too? So if it holds no records of wrong, we can take that and, that bitterness and resentment that we feel, and we can turn it into, love and forgiveness. So I think that's always been something I've always tried to keep in my mind. Like, okay, yeah, he did something, but I did something, and he's not perfect, but I'm not perfect. But together,
it's humbled us even to this day.
Yeah.
And we see mistakes from people in our church. We see mistakes from people that are our neighbors. We see mistakes from people that are family.
We see mistakes from ourselves.
Like, first recognizing that we are that way, all of us. Mm-hmm. And so no one gets out of jail free.
No.
And it's God's grace is the only reason.
Lots of prayer.
So
prayer and time.
What the crazy thing is, I just have to throw this part out there. We had encountered a couple that told their story of infidelity.
Yes.
And that was a number of years prior. And I remember seeing that. And I think it was the season I was going through going, I'm never doing that. Like, that was my attitude, right? So much has changed. But your attitude towards that couple as well was what?
Well, yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, how could he do that? What's wrong with her? I'm thinking, what's wrong with her?
Her? He did it?
Or what's wrong with, no. So I'm right. What's wrong with her? I would never stay with someone who did that to me.
Oh my gosh.
And here I am. And I spent a lot of time with my counselor going through that, saying, but people are going to think these things about me because I stayed with him. But of course I want to stay with him. That's a testament to you and I and God's plan for us. So of course I wanted to fight for my marriage, and I did. And people don't always understand that because, the world tells you, get divorced, they did something wrong. Well, no, everyone does something wrong.
Yeah.
So looking back now, like, she fought for her marriage. He fought for their marriage. Well, so did we. And we kept our marriage, right? And it's stronger than ever right?
100%.
Yeah. So I don't care what people think anymore. Yeah. I hope that when they look at me, they can judge me all they want. If they're like, why would she stay with him? Well, if you understand, if you knew my story, you don't. You can if you want to know my story. But even if you don't, we shouldn't be judging anyways, right? But humans do that.
And how has that changed now, even now? Because I know personally we're both processing pretty significant things from our childhood. Mm-hmm. And even to this day now, right? Things that were gone in the past. More recently, led us to this day and this path. And really kind of the idea of this podcast came from a trip we had together and just us, like, just being aware of his presence and soaking our time in together. She shared with me something she never shared with anyone. And on the flip side, I began counseling with my mom, someone that I never wanted to have a relationship with. And it was through you and your words that I was able to come full circle. The person that had challenges with her was really actually full circle my own challenges that you helped me realize. And so I took a step towards counseling with my own mom. And it's never too late at 39 and she's 69.
Yeah.
And how has that improved our marriage? And how has that improved your relationship? Yeah.
There's so much less tension between you and I we still have our moments, but we're working on that. We'll get there. But it helped us for sure. There's way less tension. And I have been able to see my mother-in-law in a different light. Even though she does these things that bother me, I do things that bother her. And she's got her issues and I've got my issues. And to see her as a human and to see her going to counseling at her age and trying to right her wrongs and trying to make her life better is so impressive. Like, I'm actually just last time she was here, a few weeks ago, and I could see some changes in her and how she's really been working towards those things that she's talked about. I'm not going to share her stuff on it, but the things she wanted that she's been working on. And she said, it's going to take a long time though, but I really want to do it. And I was just like, that's where it's at. To people first got to realize I have to make some changes and then they have to do it. And she's doing it. And so we're hanging out with them next weekend and it's going to be fun. We're going to a concert, and they're going to a couple of kids' football games.
Who's going to be there?
Lauren Daigle and Brandon Lake.
Oh, I think
Brandon
the
Lake
bonus.
for me. Yeah, Brandon Lake. But they're coming for like an extra day because I was like, let's have them come and go to our other kids' games. So I think we're getting there. Like it's kind of it's just crazy how God does those things, though. Never I would imagine
He's got better plans than we can ever
for sure.
imagine, and he continues to over deliver,
Yeah.
you know, in all aspects. And you know, the difference between grace and mercy, we've talked about this. Like, mercy is not getting what's coming to you, and being the person I have been shouldn't really deserve second chances or multiple chances. And I should be condemned and in some countries, you know, sent away.
That's the worldview, but Jesus does tell you.
But Jesus does say that my grace is sufficient for you. And that grace,
and forgive. Yeah.
That grace of forgiveness and what he did on the cross wiped it all away. And even the things that you're processing now and from your childhood, it's new beginnings. It's just this opening of a flood of love, and just processing these things has been amazing.
The heart's definitely changed.
The heart softened.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
and we were Christians our whole lives.
Well, that's the worst. What is our story? What is our story? We used to talk about this. We don't have a story. We're boring. We grew up in the church. We did this stuff. We learned some Bible scripture and like
memorized all that. Yeah.
So, anything else you'd like to say before we go?
I don't know. I would just say fight for your marriage, and just make your wife so important to you, and make your husband so important to you. And if you wanna keep that marriage, fight for it and do what you need to do. But also remember, God is in that marriage, and I would rely on God because He's first.
That's awesome. I'll wrap the show with kind of my final thoughts, and just really excited to be here because I had no idea this would ever be the story. I would be the guy that had to carry this weight around and this drama. And, you know, I promised myself it's never going to happen to me. And, you know, just the focus of success was so blinding, and the deceit of prioritizing everything else above my family and my faith has taught me so much. And so the grace you've showed me, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for the love you've given me unconditionally. I'm so proud of the growth I've seen in you, and the humbling of your own self to swallow the pride and to take steps.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to see how you pour into our children, and it might come out.
Here it comes.
but your passion for helping others, far beyond